Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Nation Building. On our program, we examine the political, social, and moral issues in the leadership of the Bahamas. On our program today, we have a very exciting guest. We're talking some historical stuff. We're looking back at our country's growth and development, and we have someone that represents the Mail Boat Company. And we'll introduce that guest when we come back from this break.
Being awarded a free live phone in the Making A Space campaign last year was one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me. I used my phone to play games, chat with friends over the summer break, and watch YouTube videos. Then I got an idea to start my own balloon business. Being able to use my own phone to start up my balloon business was so important to me. I used my phone to research prices and learn how to do balloon designs that I currently offer to my customers today. The internet speed was so good. Oh my gosh, there was no buffering and the videos were very clear. I am so grateful to Alive for my new phone. Thanks Alive. My name is Cara Snows, owner of the Balloon Princess, and I believe in best.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Hi, would you like to try our chunk noodles?
I only come in here for 2 items.
Okay, but it'll only take 1 second and it's so delicious. Just 1 second.
Yeah, everything tastes delicious. Wow, it's really good. Where do I find it in the store?
Right this way, let me show you. Okay. Thank you.
Glad to see you. Do the shuffle. It's been a while, do the shuffle.
I can't do shuffle.
You know what? You need this.
What's that?
Junkanoo Juice Medley.
That's it. Give me some more.
Come on, yeah, that's it. Jamaica Bahama Imports. Always got it.
Come on down and get your Junkanoo juice today.
It's the market for the entire family. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Bahamian owned and operated, Sawyer's is known for the lowest prices on meats, produce, fresh fruits, and vegetables. Check them out on Facebook and the Freeport News to find out all of their weekly specials and their monthly blowout sales. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Your grocery bill just got lower.
Hello and welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. Today I have the pleasure of sitting with Mr. Elvin Taylor. And Mr. Taylor is a part of a family-owned enterprise in the Bahamas that's been around for a very, very long time. Welcome to Nation Building, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, sir. Good
Wonderful.
to be here.
It's good to have you here. We don't we don't often enough sit down with business leaders in the country and people who are a part of enterprises that make things work in the country, provide jobs for people, and have stories to tell. I think it's very important that we do that, and we're seeking to do that more and more in this period of our program. We're very heavily political, and I think we fill a void in talking to political leaders and having them explain to the country what they're doing. But it's very, very important to be able to tell the country's story. And if you don't know your history, they say, well, you don't have a bright future. And so we're going to do just that today. The Mail Boat Company has been around as long as I know myself. I have have had the privilege to have had many interactions over the last 25 years, having been a business owner myself with the company, and thought we'd like to go back to the origins of the mail boat. And so, but before we do that, I know you're a good Christian gentleman, very man of faith, very passionate about your values and beliefs. And so it's an opportunity also to share with the Bahamas today your humble beginnings. And so before we dive into the mailboat specifically, just want to give you an opportunity to share a little about your background, your upbringing.
I was born in 1961 in Parrotsville, Megwana. I lived there with my parents and siblings for the first 9 years of my life before we moved to Nassau. My parents have 11 children, and I'm the last of the 11.
Oh boy, you're the baby.
So by the time I came along, my older brothers and sisters, most of them, with the exception of about 3, were gone. My older brother worked at the contract in the United States picking fruits. In fact, my oldest brother, last child, is older than me.
Oh my God.
My oldest sister, my 2 oldest sisters, and my second oldest brother, children, and I in set. And so I've had a wonderful childhood. I've been blessed by having been born in a very exceptional family. And having come from Megwana, further added to the benefits of family life for me.
What was, if you can recall, was the population at the time?
When I was born, as I grew as a child, in my recollection, the population was about 300 persons in Megwana, and today it's still about 300 persons.
Wow, interesting. But like most other family islands, I guess fishing would have been a major staple.
Yeah, you did what your parents did. There were no businesses, no gas stations of sort, no food stores and the like that you would have in a city such as Nassau or Grand Bahama for that matter. So whatever your parents did, that's what you did. In my case, you went to the farm. You farmed with your parents. You went and did whatever it was you could do as a child. And if you were a boy, you fished with your siblings. When they went fishing, you went. And the family was sustained. Every family on the island was sustained by farming and fishing. And some of the produce and the fish, etc., were sent to market in Nassau to other family members. And in most cases, it was given to crew members on the mailboats. They bought it to Nassau. They sold it for you or your family. They bought the proceeds or whatever they were asked to purchase with the money. They purchased that, whether it was a bag or sack of flour, as it were in those days, or a case or can of lard. They bought those back and give it to your parents.
You know, I believe that the story is not being told enough of the humble beginnings of so many successful, and especially successful Black Bahamian business people and families who have struggled and overcome great obstacles and hurdles over the years to be able to raise a family, to raise successful children. And I certainly want to do my part, but encourage others also to tell our story more, because it's not being told enough. When you look back at those early days, and young people today have so many excuses why they are not succeeding. You look back at those humble beginnings, and is there anything in your mind that when you look back then and look at your children now and the privileges that they have, our children, is there anything that you have strong regrets about?
Yes. I think we took for granted the advantages and benefits that were associated with simple, ordinary family island life. I was born in a house that was about 20 feet by 15 feet. That's the size of the house. 11 children were born in that same house. I mean, we didn't go to the hospital to be born. We were born in the house in which we lived. We slept as the children, as we grew. The house had one room. That was our parent. We slept on the floor and in the loft. And we grew. Everybody was happy. We all had things in common. We all never considered that which you had belonging to you, because as an example, clothes were passed down. If you were an older brother, you didn't wear what you had to finish it. You cared for what you had. You took care of the clothes that your parents gave you, that in most cases they made from flour bag or the bag that the sugar came in. They gave to you. And when it could no longer fit you, it was passed on to the next brother, and then to the next brother. And so, but there was this togetherness, this oneness among families, not just my family, but every family. And if you look back pretty much at the people, the generations of that era, everybody seemed to have fared pretty well.
And so, is it fair to say that as a country and as a people, we have lost our values, our fundamental values?
We've lost our way, and I don't think there is no one thing that you could point to, with the exception of family life. The greatest contributor to negativity in our country is the breakdown of the family. When I was a child, wherever you went, you conducted yourselves responsibly, because whoever was there was around, had the responsibility and embraces and the authority to discipline you. And you would pray and hope they don't, after disciplining you, tell your parents that they had to discipline you.
Amazing, because today we have parents going to the schools to fight teachers for disciplining their children.
And that is sad. That's part of the problem.
We've certainly lost our way in too many ways. What was schooling like with a small population like that?
We had two, it's been a while, but we had 2 or 3 classrooms. I think it was 2 classrooms. It was called an all-age school for that reason. It was all-age. Every student shared the same spaces. For instance, the teacher might have been teaching a child 5 years old or children 5 years old. At the same time, in that same room, there was children 12 years old and some a little older. Some of the teachers were what they called in those days monitors, meaning the person was not trained in a university or college to be a teacher, but the person as a student was exceptional compared to the other students. So that person then would turn around and be empowered to teach the other ones.
And that went up to what age roughly?
And those, at that time, most persons, after they would have arrived at the age of 13 or 14, for further education, you moved to Nassau. But prior to that, when I came along, my brothers and sisters before me, they pretty much, especially the first 5 of them, they went to school until they were 12. Most of my elder siblings left school at 12 years old. They lived and is living their entire life based on an education for a 12-year-old child. And they have fared and is still faring well. Education has its place, it's important, and every child should be given the opportunity, in my mind, be made to pursue it to the greatest extent. But at the same time, you must keep in mind, there are some ingredients that is found in family togetherness that has a way of impacting people's lives that even in the absence of education, you do well. The old people used to say, manners take you around the world.
And I believe you're pointing to this whole concept of families. You've been pointing so heavily with this whole thing of family. What is it that made families stay together then? What was the difference then and now, you think?
The difference then is that I think the difference is, for the most part, is, well, there are many, but prosperity would be one of those. In pursuing the success, the dream, if you will, the modern dream, people go apart. They don't spend time with their children. You don't do a lot of things, activities together. When my parent, and for the most part my mother, because my father was a seaman and he sailed pretty much 12 months of the year, and he would come home for a month on vacation or what have it, other than when he started to operate the mailboat and came home on a weekly basis. But for the most part, when my mother went to the farm, the children went to the farm with her, or they were assigned a task, a responsibility that they were in her absence executing and had to give an account for when they came back. There were always people around caring for children, whether it was the grandparents. Parents and grandparents living together in those days in the same yard and sharing the same spaces add benefits to family life that you can't quantify with dollars and cents. There's no amount of money that you can give for that, and that is absent.
One last thing in this segment. What was church life like?
Church life was sacred. It was sacred to the degree that, as an example, as a child, you misbehaving, and when you began to approach the church, you behave. You mentally put yourself in the best, at your best performance in the vicinity of a church building. Church was not optional. Not only did you go, your parents took you. You had no choice as to whether or not you would participate. It was mandatory. It was expected. It was the norm. And today, that's not so.
And so, in summary, all of what you have shared, you would say a major part of that foundation was what? Fear of God, church life, what?
But people feared God. Don't misunderstand me. When you take a look back at that generation, the generation before my parents and before, there were equally wicked people in that generation as there were in all generations. And if you look back at that generation as an adult, you see some things that you couldn't see as a child and you stand amazed. But despite those shortcomings, those people reverence God.
And I think that is a lacking component in our, unfortunately, in our culture, in our country today, are too lacking, that is. And you're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Hi, would you like to try our chunk noodles?
I only come in here for 2 items.
Okay, but it'll only take 1 second and it's so delicious. Just 1 second.
Yeah, everything tastes delicious. Wow, it's really good. Where do I find it in the store?
Right this way, let me do it. Okay. And
I'm glad to see you. Do the shuffle. It's been a while, do the shuffle.
I can't do shuffle, man.
You know what? You need this.
What's that?
Junkanoo Juice Medley.
That's it. Give me some more.
Jamaica Bahama Imports. Always got it.
come on down and get your Junkanoo juice today.
Being awarded a free iPhone in the Making A's Pays campaign last year was one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me. I used my phone to play games, chat with friends over the summer break, and watch YouTube videos. Then I got an idea to start my own balloon business. Being able to use my own phone to start up my balloon business was so important to me. I used my phone to research prices and learn how to do balloon designs that I currently offer to my customers today. The internet speed was so good. Oh my gosh, there was no buffering and the videos were very clear. I am so grateful to Alive for my new phone. Thanks Alive. My name is Cara Snows, owner of the Balloon Princess, and I believe in best.
It's the market for the entire family. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Bahamian owned and operated, Sawyer's is known for the lowest prices on meats, produce, fresh fruits, and vegetables. Check them out on Facebook and the Freeport News to find out all of their weekly specials and their monthly blowout sales. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Your grocery bill just got lower.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today having a historic discussion and a very valuable one with one of the, a family member who is a significant contributor to the development of his family enterprise, the Mailboat Company. I'm talking with Mr. Elvin Taylor. Mr. Taylor, we're here today to talk about the mailboat. We want to look at the history of the mailboat, what has made it successful over the years. And so in this segment, we want to do just that, get straight to the point and ask, your dad was the one that started the company, and when was it started?
My brother and my dad. My brother played a most important position in the
Which one?
establishment,
Okay,
Edens Taylor.
Sorry?
Edens Taylor.
Okay, Edens and your brother. Okay, when did they start?
In 1960. In 1960, and a few years before, my brother Edens worked on a boat by the name of the Cape Harvest for an American gentleman as a crew member, deckhand. 1959, 1960, the gentleman from America that lived in the Bahamas at the time, or was living in the Bahamas at the time, decided to return to the United States. And he liked my brother and his work ethics, as I understood, so much so that when he was leaving, he spoke to my brother about, you are capable of operating this vessel. Why don't I sell this vessel to you and you continue to operate it as I was operating it? And
forgive me, but I can't let you go on without, let's make sure. Your brother was hired as a handyman?
a crewman, yeah.
A crewman.
Yeah,
and to be sure, he didn't have any skills or knowledge or training in navigation or anything. He just was a hands on deck.
My brother, from a child, I'm told, keep in mind, my brother was gone when I was born. I was told my brother loved the sea, as we all did, loved the ocean. And in Meguana, most children gravitate to the natural, the plumps in the bushes, crabbing, fishing, and those type of things. At 6, 7 years old, we were gone for the entire day on Saturdays playing. Our parents didn't look for us because they knew we were safe. As children, we would go off the shore 2, 3 miles fishing in boats from children that were 6, 7, 8, and 10.
But you had someone older with you, though.
The oldest in the boat would have been somebody 9, 10 years old. And we would fish. The lines that we unreel from ropes drift ashore. And my brother was very good at that type of thing. The story is told that on 1 or 2 occasions, he showed up late for school, and very late, and left after lunch, and he was discovered on the beach making little boats to sail, which he was severely disciplined. But he was always drawn to the water, it seemed. And he worked for this gentleman as a deckhand, as a helper, if you will. And when the gentleman was leaving, the gentleman, for whatever reason, favored my brother and spoke to him saying, why don't I sell this boat to you? You have served me well.
How long was he?
3 years, worked for him for 3 years. You have served me well. You are quite capable of doing the work of taking care of it. Why don't I sell it to you and you continue to operate it? My brother at the time was 17 years old. So my brother was too young to accept responsibility to sign documents to go into the bank and to do business. So my father was sailing elsewhere. No, my father at that time, I think, was on the contract. Because between sailing and the contracts, he gravitated to those things to support the family. And my brother contacted my father. My father was contacted. He returned to Nassau, spoke with the gentleman. The gentleman then took both of them into Scotiabank, and make a long story short, said to the manager, I'm selling my boat to these 2 gentlemen, father and son. No down payment is necessary. They will every month deposit so much onto this account for me. And at the end of the day, after they would have placed X amount, they will own this vessel outright. And that's how it was started.
There must have been significant trust in the country back then to conduct business in that way. It might have been an unusual situation, I don't know, but notwithstanding, to turn over a vessel. I don't know how big the vessel was or how many tonnage, whatever, but obviously it was plying. Was it just Nassau to Meguana?
At the time, they did not go to Meguana. I do not recall all the places they went, but I would assume they didn't go very far from Nassau. But it was a profitable venture when the gentleman who owned it operated it. And as for trust, I agree with you. And I think if credit ought to go anywhere for that, then the credit has to go two places. It has to go, in the first instance, to my parents who instilled that in us. And secondly, to my brother who displayed that.
So once that agreement was done, you said your father was on contract. I assume that was Florida. I mean,
Yes,
most Bahamians
yes.
at that time, and the younger generation
Yes.
don't know this, that many Bahamians, a significant amount of Bahamians, I was told, in those days, the 50s and even to the 1960s, early 60s, went to Florida on contract to
Yes.
work, to support their families. So once that arrangement was done, your dad then became what? Did he have experience in captaining?
Yes, as most people did from Family Islands. And again, keep in mind, Family Island life is, and the water is synonymous. I mean, there isn't one without the other. And that's why even today as a Bahamian, it's difficulty for you to truly enjoy as a Bahamian live in the Bahamas without access to the natural resources of the Bahamas, especially the water. And so Family Island people, especially the men, had no issues with life at sea. They fished. Every male on the Family Island who lived there for their entire lives fished to a great degree for a living.
Right. So they began to operate the vessel. That was between what year that was again?
That was 5960.
Right. And so how long did that initial how long did that operation take place with that vessel?
They operated that vessel for a number of years. They paid off the gentleman. They finally outright owned the vessel, and exactly how many years they operated it before they acquired another vessel, I don't quite recall. But I could remember the vessel as a child.
What was the name of it?
Cape Hatteras.
Okay.
I can remember the vessel as a child when they came to Meguana for the first time. No, I wouldn't say for the first time. Sorry. When I recall it, yeah. It was a relatively small vessel, as vessels are today. In my mind's eye, I would assume that it was probably maybe 40, 50 feet long and maybe 15 feet wide, if that.
And certainly at that time would have been big to a child in Meguana.
It was a big deal, even though looking back now, even though I could not have appreciated it then for what it was. And I sometime in the 1960s, the government of Bahamas gave them what was called a mail-by contract to offer service to the island of Meguana. And so in the 60s, they began on a contractual basis to provide the weekly services to the people of Meguana.
Now, when that occurred, I would assume, like other Family Islands, there would have been other operators providing mail services and so on to those islands as well, right?
Yes, sir.
So the name, the mail boat, as it's operated today, did it stem from that, or how did that come about?
Yes. From back then, in the early 60s, when they were given that opportunity, they continued to participate in what is called the mailboat industry. And so in recent times, in looking and planning for the future and how to move forward, we determined that the best name to empower ourselves to go into the foreseeable future would be the Mailboat Company Limited. And so in the late 80s, we named ourselves.
Right. Yeah. So let's continue the journey though. After that period during the 60s, what happened? Was there an upgrade to another vessel, or what happened? Walk us through that period.
In the 60s, there was an upgrade to a vessel called the Marcella I. The vessel was built by them, for them, at St. Augustine, Florida, a wooden vessel. And that vessel serviced Crooked Island, Long Key, Arklands, and Megwana. Initially, it was just Megwana with the Cape Otters. Then later, the government added some other responsibilities. It was Arklands, Crocodile, Long Key, and Megwana. That vessel I recall vividly. As a teenager, I worked on that vessel with my father. I had some days, memorable days, that it's been imprinted on my mind that I would never forget. I could remember vividly one evening, my father, the vessel that is, arrived Arklands in a place called Harbour, which is to the northeast of Arklands. And in those days, as in now in Arklands, in that particular area, there were no docking facilities, so the vessel would anchor offshore, about a mile or two. And they used what was called the dinghies, the smaller boats, to put it overboard. And whatever goods were assigned to that island or were sent from Nassau to that island, by hand you would lift and pass to the dinghy. And so on that particular evening, we arrived there about 5, 6 in the evening. The goods were being placed to the dinghy, but why I remember that is for these two reasons. Among the cargo for Arklands was what seemed to be quite a bit of cement. You know, cement, the bag of cement is 94 pounds, and the cement went into the dinghy. Well, I was on the side of the boat, you know, it's a big deal. It's like watching television, because, you know, by the way, the first time I saw television as a child, I was 10 years old. First time I saw a car, I was 9 years old. But, you know, it's an exciting time. So I'm on the side of the boat for which they were offloading the goods from the bigger boat into the dinghy. And so my father looked after me and said, "What are you waiting for?" I said, "Sir?" He said, "Go in the dinghy, go ashore." So I climbed down, I got into the little boat, I went ashore, and he did the same. So we had two dinghies going back and forth. When the cement came ashore, I could not lift a bag by myself, so I had to lift one end. But he ensured that I wasn't going to watch. So I lift one end, somebody else lift another end, and for hours into the dark, we worked on that. What was so outstanding or rememberable for me was that here I am as a little boy. I think I might have been 8, 9 years old or so, 7 years, even perhaps 7. I'm lifting this one end of the cement. I'm doing my very best holding it with 2 hands because I can't drop it. And Arklands, at that time, for some reason in my mind, that's the most mosquitoes I ever felt in my life. Everywhere mosquito was biting. I'm holding this bag of cement,
Can't let go.
and I can't let go. When I rest it, you rub your hand over your hands, like your hands full of mosquitoes. And it seemed like it took forever for us to finish. We went aboard when it was finished. The vessel sailed. We went to Megwana, arriving at night. But I remember getting home early in the morning before sunrise, and my mother was there, you know, as she always was, open arms reception to see us. And, you know, I'm the last child, so she's looking forward to her baby coming home. So I arrived home, and I'm thinking in my mind, I can tell my mommy how I had to suffer. Ain't no way I can go back. So I told my mother about the ordeal and how the mosquito was and how they bite me. And, you know, as a child, you complaining. So my mother listened, and she listened, and she listened. And the next day was time to go again. This was for the summer. So I'm expecting to stay at home to play with my friends for the summer, you know, make traps, catch birds, whatever children did on the family island. So next afternoon, my father getting ready to go, and he says, I'm thinking I'm not going because in no way mommy can let me go. So my father says, he's walking around and says, where the child? So my mother says something to that extent that, you're not going to take him back, eh? My father said, he's a boy. He can be a man. Tell him meet me to the truck. That's the only words he said. My mother put some little clothes in a bag, in a little paper bag, and she gave that to me, and I was on the truck, and I went. If you if you were around my father, you wasn't going to be lazy. You would work. You had no choice. My father told my mother, his motto was, don't force none of these children to eat, but you make them work.
Oh boy, if they work, they got to eat.
Okay? You make them work.
When the transition between Marcellus 1 and Marcellus 2, walk us through that.
Marcella 1, after a while, the same brother wanted to get another vessel to grow. In fact, he had this vision, and he's always been, he's always been a person with vision. And he wanted to expand into the United States. So he wanted to get another vessel. So my father's position was that, for what? Would you want more trouble for a headache, etc.? My father wasn't interested. So my brother kept working at it, the same brother Edens. And he then went to Germany, bought this other vessel, Marcella 2, bought it, and he operated it. My father stayed on the Marcella 1, and he went to the Marcella 2.
So to be clear, the Marcella 2 wasn't made from scratch for...
No, Marcella 2 was purchased. It was an already existing vessel operating by its owner in Germany. He went to Germany looking for a vessel, and he bought it.
And this was not a wooden vessel, obviously.
This was a metal vessel, steel hull, and he operated it out of the U.S. into Nassau, into Andros, Nassau, and Duluth.
How was it, how difficult was it at the time, getting licensing? What year was this, by the way?
This would have been in the early 70s. And many of the rules as they are now did not apply back then. For instance, the officers didn't have to be so qualified. In fact, my brother, the same brother who left school at 12, who worked for this man and was given the opportunity to own the vessel at 17, I was captain of the vessels from back then, along with my father. And he operated the vessel as the captain out of Florida into Andros, into Nassau, into Duluth for years. He was privileged enough to have gotten a contract from, I don't remember the correct name, but it would have been the Ministry of Agriculture. It wouldn't have been called that, but there was a chicken farm in Hatchet Bay.
Very famous.
His vessel, Marcella 2, was used to carry the chicken feed for the chicken from the U.S., Florida, into Hatchet Bay, and he did that for quite a few years.
Okay, and so that would have helped to sustain and make it profitable,
Yes.
Along with doing the other route.
Yes.
Was Freeport a part of Grand Bahama, a part of that?
Freeport came along in 1982, thereabout, in the 1980s, and Freeport came along. And throughout their journey, throughout our family journey, there has been good times, like every business, and there have been challenging times. There have been times when, in order to sustain themselves, they had to do a number of things to be able to make it. Like they used the vessel periodically to go and went fishing, and conking to sustain
They did what they had to do to survive it. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. Right back after these messages.
It's the market for the entire family. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Bahamian owned and operated, Sawyer's is known for the lowest prices on meats, produce, fresh fruits, and vegetables. Check them out on Facebook and the Freeport News to find out all of their weekly specials and their monthly blowout sales. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Your grocery bill just got lower.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Hi, would you like to try our chunk meat?
I only come in here for 2 items.
Okay, but it'll only take 1 second, and it's so delicious. Just 1 second.
Yeah, everything tastes delicious. Wow, it's really good. Where do I find it in the store?
Right this way. Let me show you. Okay. Thanks.
Wait, I see him. Do the shuffle. It's been a while, do the shuffle.
I can't do shuffle, man.
You know what? You need this.
What's that?
Junkanoo Juice Medley.
That's it. Give me some more.
Jamaica Bahama Imports. Always got it.
Come on down and get your Junkanoo juice today.
Being awarded a free iPhone in the Making A's Pays campaign last year was one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me. I used my phone to play games, chat with friends over the summer break, and watch YouTube videos. Then I got an idea to start my own balloon business. Being able to use my own phone to start up my balloon business was so important to me. I used my phone to research prices and learn how to do balloon designs that I currently offer to my customers today. The internet speed was so good. Oh my gosh, there was no buffering and the videos were very clear. I am so grateful to Alive for my new phone. Thanks Alive. My name is Cara Snows, owner of the Balloon Princess, and I believe in best.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today. We're talking about the mail boat, a part of Bahamian history, with Mr. Elvin Taylor. And Mr. Taylor, of course, is a part of the family network that has operated the mailboat company and is currently operating the mailboat company. Mr. Taylor, quickly, we know the story right down to Marcellus 2. What happened with Marcellus 1?
Marcellus 1 caught a fire in Sims, Long Island, and it was burned to its hull. It was destroyed by fire in Sims, Long Island.
Okay. So that vessel was never replaced? What happened with your dad? Who operated that vessel?
Yeah, that vessel was replaced with Marcellus. That vessel was replaced. Eventually, Marcellus 3 was purchased. Marcellus 3 was purchased because there was 2, then 3 was purchased. It was 1, 2, 3 was purchased. And then after Marcellus 3, Fiesta and the list goes on.
So your dad, did he move directly from operating the vessel to the Marcellus 3?
Yes.
He moved to, so I guess it took some time between acquiring a new vessel, and that of course would have been another steel vessel.
Yes.
So when I met the mailboat company in operation about 25 years ago, your dad was still alive and being the captain of this vessel. Remember fondly, still had the crane lifting things off the dock. Right. Very exciting days when the Fiesta mail arrived and this new era of the mailboat came about. You always carried, if I remember correctly, Marcellus 3 always carried passengers back and forth from Freeport to Nassau and so on, but the Fiesta was a whole new world. So let's talk about the transition between Marcellus 3 and the Fiesta and how the company moved on to that.
My father my father took sick, and in the 80s, and my brother and I, Limus
Taylor.
Yes, filled in. Limus didn't carry the majority of the load to assist him while he was sick. In fact, my father was shot a number of times, 7 times, but he survived and lived with us. 7
different occasions?
Yes,
was that robbery? A robbery?
Yes, someone broke into his home one evening, and in pursuing to rob, and I believe my father fought back, and he was shot a number of times. The Lord used a number of physicians, persons at Doctor's Hospital. Dr. Dwayne Sands led that team, and all the fragments, etc., was removed. My father had a full recovery with very limited setbacks, and he lived a number of years after that. But during his ailment, my brother Limus and I stepped in and we assist. And during that time, collectively we thought, because we weren't that much interested. In fact, for me as a person, I never saw myself, being that involved after my childhood years into mailboats. I looked to other things and to move on, but after my father got shot, my brother and I got together, and we felt that, we can, maybe there is a future here, a possibility if if you really be willing to work hard. And we talked about some things, and as a result, Fiesta was realized.
And what year was that when the Fiesta was launched?
In 2002.
2002.
Yeah.
So the company continued to grow, have continued to grow since the acquisition of the Fiesta.
Yes.
At one point, I remember there was talk of another vessel. I guess the economic times.
We looked at the difference between purchasing and leasing. There are a number of persons around here in the Bahamas with vessels, and for various reasons, sometimes it's more economical to charter others for a fixed period of time than to do the same thing you would do if you acquire a new one. But yes, and it also had to do with the economic times and challenges that companies face from time to time.
Would you say that these days, having experienced growth from scratch to where the company is, would you say that these are more unstable, uncertain times as a business entity as opposed to, say, the 70s?
Yes, definitely so. Definitely so.
What is a major contributing factor to that instability?
I don't know that there is one. I would think there is a number of things. Some would be the diminishing factors that concerns the middle class, the shrinking of the middle class. People have less resources and less monies to spend. And in the bottom line, I think that would be the number one.
As a people, the population of the Bahamas is overwhelmingly a black population. Yet in business, especially the more significant business, that you don't see, in my humble estimation, a reflection as far as wealth in the country, spread a fair distribution of wealth with the majority population. And I don't want to we're not getting into racial issues here. We're simply just looking at the facts. And I'm saying, is it as a people of African descent, have we not learned the lessons of the past? Have we not been diligent? Or is it more of the way the system is? In other words, there hasn't been a deliberate system in terms of governance over the years, and we've had majority rule since '67, to enable more black Bahamians to enter into business, to practice the right business principles, to be able to succeed, to be able to create jobs for the people in the country.
And again, I don't know that there is any one of those factors. I think for different people, different companies, the individuals, there's a number of things that comes to play. There's for small businesses and from time to time there is the challenge of funding, finances, which has always been a challenge in the Bahamas. There has been, and it continues to be, the challenge of accountability. Most people, VAT as an example, it has its plus and its minuses. Mm-hmm. The negative of VAT, and I'm not knocking VAT. There are others much more intelligent than I who have determined that it is a necessary thing. But VAT takes money from people.
Out of the economy.
Out of the economy, and that's a fact. But one of the positive things, if any, that VAT does, that would have been great for many small businesses, especially in the 80s, is it brings about a degree of accountability. For instance, challenge many small businesses face is that as simple as having audits, or even if they're on the internal audits, and how can you, as a businessman, how can you properly govern yourself or conduct business if if you aren't certain of
What you're making.
of your income, your expenditures, let me talk about basic things. And that forces the business owner to do due diligence. And so that's the plus that I see for it. Then does the negative outweigh the positive? Well, that's your audience have to make that call. But it's a fact that as time go on, for many businesses, the money not being there as it were, and I think the powers to be has to find ways to empower the populace so that they can find other ways for revenue generating that it would compensate.
As the mailboat is today, as we get ready to wrap up, the captain of the mailboat is your brother Limas Taylor, who has been operating for many years, and I think Limas is next
Older
to you.
than me.
He's
Is a sister between me and Limas.
okay, so he's the third to last. But it seems that he has a passion for the sea.
Yes, sir.
Is that fair
Yes,
to
sir.
say? And so continues to apply between Florida. You have the company has grown. It has expanded into its own facility, I believe, in Oaksfield, and has done a lot of things. And I think the company is, fair to say, an example of a Bahamian business that started from scratch. All right?
sir.
No foreign interests,
Yes, sir.
all Bahamian interests, started from scratch, and has succeeded and is still succeeding. And so before we go, I wanted to ask you, is there anything in your mind, or I should say, what is in your mind the greatest threat to the survival of this Bahamian enterprise that has been a staple in our country since 1960?
I think a mismanagement of legislation, futuristically speaking, could hamper the industry, not just for myself, but for others. At the same time, enforcement of
Current?
enforcement of current, but also futuristic rules are equally necessary. And I stress enforcement because there is no substitute for safety. There is no substitute for best practices. But at the same time, we are a third world country. You have to be careful wanting to make us first world country, forcing us to meet first world future rules.
When you're not prepared?
But not a matter of being prepared, it's a matter of economy of scale. As an example, if you live in some European countries where there are millions of citizens, there will be the chance that many more persons to purchase the product of a company or to use the services of a company. If you live in the Bahamas where you have less than 1 million, maybe give or take 500,000 or a little over persons to use the service, and out of that, based on where the service is being offered, the numbers even shrink less. When the rules are made from an international perspective, you have to be careful to ensure that the rules that are made is also beneficial to the companies in your small country in terms of economy of scale. As opposed to somebody else in a country where there are millions of people where the income is 50 times, 100 times
And they
greater.
have access to better funding at
they
a
have
lower
access
interest
to
rate.
everything that is better for them. And I understand sometimes the zeal for those in authority to want to do certain things, but the way to do it and to respond is not to wait till there is an incident or till some rule have arrived in terms of the deadline for enforcement, but it's for us to become more proactive as a people, to dialogue more frequently, and to together move forward that is in a way that empowers the country and its stakeholders, that it will be better for all concerns. Because my intention could be very good, but there are some basic, very important things that, with my good intention and not involving, especially the people who
practicing the discipline.
Exactly, not involving the participants. You could then
destroy the
industry.
So, it begs the question: have successive governments simply not listened enough?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that because I don't know whether they have listened or not. I can't speak for a person in terms of that regard. But what I would say is this. I think we are at a crossroad as far as the maritime industry in the Bahamas is concerned. The maritime industry is the largest industry in the world. Every industry that you can think of is a part of the maritime industry. The Philippines, if you think about it as an example, the greatest contributor to the GDP in the Philippines comes from seafarers as the maritime industry. Like them, we have a lot in common. We are a country that is dispersed, a number of separate islands surrounded by water. And we can take a look at them and see how they position themselves to benefit from this international industry. And I think there's been effort to do that, but we have to do that in collaboration with the local stakeholders on the ground, and not sufficient of that, as far as I'm concerned, is taking place.
Good. Before we close, I have to do this because I think over the years I have tremendous regard for so many of your staff. Can't name all of them here, but I'm sure that the company wouldn't be as successful as it is without people like the Barbara Taylors in Freeport and your staff in Nassau. Is there any particular thing that you want to say about your staff compliment?
Yes, sir. We don't sell products. We don't manufacture nothing. The only thing we offer is services. And without the staff, we are nothing. Ms. Stubbs, Barbara, to whom you refer, Mr. Storr and the others in Freeport, same as the staff in Andros and the staff in Exuma, where we called, and the staff in Nassau, they all do a wonderful job. We have challenges like every other company. There are days when the services may not be what it ought to be, but our efforts, our intention, our objective is to always provide the best service humanly possible. And when we fail to do that, as we have from time to time, we live up to our responsibility, we accept that, and we do what we can to correct, and we move on. As far as the staff is concerned, I thank God for them every day. I pray for them every day, and I'm grateful for everyone. We have people that have been in this company for almost 40 years. And again, they are the success story as far as Mailboat is concerned.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, for coming and sharing the story of the Mailboat, a successful Bahamian enterprise that has been around from the early 60s and continued to do well in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. You've been watching Nation Building. It's been our pleasure to bring this broadcast to you. And stay tuned for next week's edition of Nation Building. And as always, have a great week.
It's the market for the entire family. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Bahamian owned and operated, Sawyer's is known for the lowest prices on meats, produce, fresh fruits, and vegetables. Check them out on Facebook and the Freeport News to find out all of their weekly specials and their monthly blowout sales. Sawyer's Fresh Market. Your grocery bill just got lower.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Hi, would you like to try our chunk meat?
I only come in here for 2 items.
Okay, but it'll only take 1 second, and it's so delicious. Just 1 second.
Yeah, everything tastes delicious. Wow, it's really good. Where do I find it in the store?
Right this way. Let me do it. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see you.
Do the shuffle.
Shuffle?
Been a while, do the shuffle.
I can't do shuffle, man.
You know what? You need this.
What's that?
Junkanoo Juice Medley.
Give me some more.
Jamaica Bahama Imports. Always got it.
Come on down and get your chocolate juice today.